YouTube. Today I'm going to be showing you a tutorial of my Stein screw that I haven't done in a year and a half. Yeah, I know, it's sad. But, we're getting it done today. So, let me go over some of the supplies and what you'll need to do. So the first thing is this cardboard cylinder. I got this from Michael's. You can also find them at Joann Fabrics. I couldn't find the size that I wanted. Originally for the first one I did, this was about 5.5 inches in diameter. And this one's a little bit smaller, so I'm just going to be using this as a demonstration. Any cardboard tube, whether paper towel, toilet paper, gift wrap roll, anything like that. You're going to also need a party crank. I would recommend having a flat one that looks like this. I found this at Party City. I know sometimes they have ones that are a little bit bulkier. I don't think they're really going to be working for this project. Plastic headband, which you can find at CVS, Walgreens, anything like that. It wasn't too expensive. And then things like a glue gun, paint brushes, X-Acto knife, scissors, kind of your basic stationery supplies. Oh, and this foam sheet. I found this at Michael's. I didn't see it at Joann Fabrics, but I guess it depends on the store. They're not very expensive. They're about less than $1 each, so you might want to grab 2 of them in case anything goes wrong. So the first thing I'm going to explain is how to make the very end of the screw that actually cranks. So the base of this structure is going to be the cardboard box or paper mache box, and the first thing you want to do is cut away most of the height from the box. Now when you're doing your measurements, bear in mind that the party crank has to be able to fit in there, so you don't want to cut this too shallow. Otherwise this isn't going to fit in there because we're going to stick it through or be cutting a hole through the bottom. Now when you have the bigger box that's 5.5 inches in diameter, this part that goes through that you actually crank goes through the center. Because this is too small, this looks a little bit off center. So you want to punch a hole pretty much in the center of the box. And then you're going to slide the party crank through the hole. Let's see if I can do this. Through the hole there. May want to take a hot glue gun and glue on the bottom and then stick it through so it is secured to the bottom of the container. Make sure though not to have too much glue around the actual crank because you want it obviously to turn and make that noise. So if you glue it right there, it's not going to be able to turn and you've wasted all that effort already. So again, glue it to the bottom, make sure this pokes through, but not having glue anywhere around here as much as possible. So once that's done, we want to focus on making the notch right here. And how we do that is taking the lid, and you're going to be marking off however thick you want it. I made mine on the original design 1 inch thick, so going from make a line in the center, and then, you know, making it this total width 1 inch, so 1.5 inches on one side, 1.5 inches on the other, cut it down the middle, and then making a little notch on the side here. So all this part that I've kind of colored, you're going to take an X-Acto knife and cut it out and remove it. Afterwards, you're going to be taking any piece of cardboard. I actually took mine from a cereal box. You just need something that's very thin, very flexible. And you wanted to cut it, I'm just going to use a piece of paper as a demonstration. You want to cut it to where it looks something like this. So this is actually going to be the bottom that you slide this in through the notch that you've cut out in the top. And then you want the sides there, so after you cut out whatever width you need to be able to fold this up to make the sides. So just as a practical demonstration, this would be the bottom part right here, like right there. And then these sides right here are these sides over here. So you want to cut out, again, a piece of thin cardboard and make it look like this shape. I added these little like wings to the very end because I think it might look neater when you're actually gluing it up inside of the box, rather than what I did. I just had the edge and I just sort of took a hot glue gun and made sure that this was secure right here, and I kind of got a little messy. Wasn't too worried about it, but if you're a perfectionist, that might be a big deal to you. The thing I want to mention is when you're actually cutting out this notch or groove here, is that however thick you want to make it, some people don't want it too thick, some people want it really dramatic and really thick, or really deep rather, is to make sure that this notch here doesn't go past where the crank is. So in my design, the bottom part right here is just about resting on top of the party crank. So yeah, that's how I determined how deep I wanted it to be, but to each their own. Moving on to these little ends right here, little attachments. These are made out of the cardboard tube. As far as the length goes, I saw some people with their cosplay that the end was sticking way far out. I didn't find that attractive, but I mean, you do whatever you want. So in order to avoid that, I made mine 2 3/4 inches thick for the side that sticks out by itself, and then for the part that's kind of nestled up to the crank, it's about 1 1/4 or 1/2. So again, depending on you, but I wouldn't make it too long, otherwise it's going to be really hard to keep up. So the longer you make the part that's attached to the, let me use this, the longer you make this part right here, the less stable it's going to be. So this is why this part's much shorter than the other one. So again, we're using a cardboard tube. So after you cut out the desired length, what I did for the outside is I actually took a little model right here. I took a piece of paper, I measured out the length that I wanted. So for example, for the 2 3/4 inch, I cut it out here. And then I just used math to figure out what the circumference was in order for the length of this piece of paper. So I don't know however you want to measure that. And then I made little notches right here. So these are about a 1/2 inch tall, 1/2 inch over, 1/2 inch down, so on and so forth. I made 2 of them. If you want to make them smaller and add more, that's up to you. So this is going to be your model for what you're going to be cutting out of the foam pad right here. So overlay it, trace it, cut it out, and then you're going to take it, let's see if this will cooperate, and wrap it around the tube and glue it down. And then after you've taken that foam and wrapped it around and glued it down, you're going to take your paint and then go through and paint it, and then making sure that, especially these little flaps right here, they're all secure and you paint around them so you don't leave any white spaces. You also want to cut out for the end that's kind of solo out here. Take the tube, set it on top of the foam pad, and then cut out the end right here. And then I just took some hot glue, put it on the end. It was pretty easy. And that's it for this one. And then I just want to mention, for the one that's closest to the crank, I only made, you can kind of barely see it here, but just 1 notch right there. Again, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, whatever. And did the same thing I did before, where I wrapped it around the tube, glued it down, painted it, stuff like that. As far as keeping everything secure, I would maybe recommend if you find something else that works best, that's great. But what kind of worked for me is I took some of that extra foam and I wrapped it inside and stuffed it in there. I originally tried to get like a block of foam and then carve it out and stick little holes in. I spent a lot of time doing that, and then I stuck it in there, and it ended up falling apart, and the pieces of foam were getting in my wig, and I didn't like that. So this is a little bit cleaner, and it makes use of all the extra foam you might have lying around if you don't like, wasting things. So yeah, that's what I did for the extra foam and stuffing it inside. So it gives it, it's a little bit more solid, a little bit more secure, and this is actually going to be necessary for how it attaches to the headband. Moving on, so the short piece that you made is actually going to be adhered to the crank. Now, you want to make sure that when you stick this on to the end of the party crank that's going to be sticking out the side of the box, that you don't glue on this side. You want to glue in here to make sure that it's secure, but it's still able to turn. So instead of, doing this, you'll still be able to turn it by keeping this free. So again, you never want to have any glue near the the base of that party crank at all. Lesson for today. So now we're in the home stretch, so we're going to take our plastic hairband, and then this is a little bit difficult. You want to make sure that, you know, you really hold on, or get a second person to help you hold this while you're screwing the screws through, because you don't want it to snap in half. But what I did is I put 2 screws here that were going to hold up the crank, and then only 1 screw for the part. So the last thing you want to do is, of course, assemble it. So you want to put on your wig cap, and then you want to put on the actual headband, then your wig, and then finally you'll have the screw sticking through the mesh of the wig that you'll be able to take the parts and slide it through the holes in the foam that we created earlier. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, please leave a comment down below, and I'll try to get to it as soon as possible. Thank you, and have a nice day.